right? You can work individually or in groups, all right? And you'll have the rest of the class today and Wednesday to work on it, okay? Everybody back? Okay. Right away, somebody read for me, just so I'm aware that you guys all have this in front of you. What's the big essential question you guys are going to be answering for this lesson? Yeah, Jose.
What attitudes influence American imperialism in the Philippines?
Okay, so somebody break that down for me, all right? What should you be focused on as you're kind of moving along throughout this series of like formative checks? What's one thing you should kind of like be in tune with or like start to become aware of? What's one thing you really want to be like thinking about if we're breaking down this essential question? Yeah, Johnny.
Like the attitudes of the Filipino people.
Okay, or the okay, yes, okay. You guys, as you're Johnny, as you're looking through this stuff and watching this stuff, start to consider what were the attitudes of Americans like at this time? Okay? Based off these resources, what was the American attitude like? And then what's the second thing with American attitudes? What is it having an effect on? Yeah.
It's having an effect on the Philippines.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. So that's the relationship we're kind of examining here, people. All right. If you're going to think about it from like a person to person kind of like every day, put yourself in these people's shoes kind of thing. We're analyzing the relationship between American cultural beliefs and its effect that it has on the Philippines. Okay. And you're going to do that through a variety of kind of learning targets. Number one, you're going to explain how and why political cartoons are useful as primary sources. The final part of this is a series of political cartoons that really give you insight into American attitudes at the time. Okay? They're good. These are some of the best sources in terms of cartoons that you're going to look at. They're interesting and they're illustrative and they're well made. Okay? Whether or not they're positive or negative in terms of cultural beliefs is up to you. Okay? Number two, you're going to have to gather historical evidence. Okay? Political cartoons will be a lot of that evidence to answer the essential question. Then what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to connect this historical evidence, okay? What were American attitudes like? And explain cause and effect of U.S. imperialism in the Philippines. Okay? What's cause and effect again? We talked about it last time, a couple times before. Who can like summarize cause and effect for me, like quickly, briefly, or who thinks they got like a good understanding of it? Rafa.
Well, the results of an action.
Perfect. Okay? The results of an action. So the action occurs and then what happens afterwards. That's well said. Okay? And then number four, I'm going to look at group work a little bit. How well can you collaborate with a peer to complete the above learning targets? All right? So think about maybe who you want to work with, whether you want to work by yourself or individually. Obviously, if you work individually on this learning target maybe doesn't apply as much, but you have the option to work individually, okay? What questions do you have about this? Everybody show me quick. We good? Okay. Now, this document is interesting because, like I said, it is it's called a hyper document because of a series of hyperlinks that are included in it. Okay, and basically what that means is all of the resources you need are in one place in this document, okay? So let me scroll down. Everybody, pull this up on your screens officially now. And I want you to follow along with me as we're moving through this, okay? everybody, there's 5 pages. We're on page 1 right now. You see a brief little like intro to the political cartoons that you're going to be looking at. Okay? You see the learning targets and the essential question. As we move down, okay, each of these tasks kind of build off of one another. The first one, you will review the outcomes of the Spanish-American War. Okay, there's a video, all right? You will click here and you'll be taken to a video. Every time there's a blue underline kind of like link, that's the hyperlink, okay? Or the link that will take you to a video, document, poem, cartoon analysis, okay? What you'll do is simply, so first of all, here's where we're located. Here's the Philippines, comparatively speaking to the United States. Then you will stop and you will answer the prompt. So what's the prompt in the first kind of formative a check? Who can read that to me? It's the first prompt. Claire.
What did the United States gain from the war with Spain?
Okay, again, we're reviewing that. You gotta know it, okay? If I haven't said it enough, you gotta know that. So quickly review it. Then we're gonna move on, okay? And you guys are going to, this is a timeline of the events, of the relationship from 1898 to 1915 of the United States and its involvement in the Philippines. We are annexing the Philippines at this point, which means to forcibly take over another country, all right? Your job is to click here on this timeline, and you will summarize the conclusions you can draw based on the timeline, on the information, based on what stands out, okay? Summarize what's going on between the United States and the Philippines over this like 16-year period, okay? Somebody click on that timeline for me real quick. Is everybody looking at it? So summarize the relationship based on that timeline. That gives you some context too. Begin exploring American attitudes influencing U.S. imperialism, okay? The first document you're going to read is a poem called White Man's Burden by Rudyard Kipling. A little bit of background here, okay? This poem was published amongst like the chaos post-Spanish-American War and the U.S.'s involvement in the Philippines. You will go through a series of prompts, 3 of them, that talk about how this particular poem may or may not have impacted cultural beliefs in America. And if it did, what were those beliefs? Somebody read for me question 2, the second prompt that you will go through when you get to the poem analysis. Yeah, Tosh.
Based on this poem, how did imperialists think of the people in the countries they were taking over?
Okay. Based on the poem, how did people think of the people in the countries they were taking over? Cultural attitudes and beliefs. Okay? Then here's kind of the larger formative assessment that you'll want to work closely on. Okay? Here's a series of political cartoons. If you click there, it'll take you to like this big packet, okay? There's probably like 10 to 15 cartoons. Your job is to go through each of them, okay? After you've made a copy of these slides. In the comments section on each slide, you will need to do 3 things. Number 1, how is America depicted? Again, the relationship component. Number 2, how is the Philippines depicted? What's the power dynamic like there? And number 3, do you think it's pro or anti-imperialist? And then why? And that'll look something like this, people. When you click on this link here, it'll take you to the Philippine-American War political cartoons. The first cartoon is an example. You saw this on the cover page. In the comments section, you will see whether it's pro or anti, American attitudes, and then Filipino attitudes. Okay? You will need to go through a series of 15 or 14 more cartoons. Remember to make a copy of this, people, okay? Then once that's completed, you will have your final exit ticket and reflection. Using Kipling's White Man's Burden and the political cartoons, explain some of the causes and effects of U.S. imperialism. You can write, sketch, or use images to explain. How do cultural beliefs come into play in your own life? Do you think the way we look at or perceive people impacts our actions, thoughts, beliefs? Why or why not? Number 1, exit ticket and assess cause and effects of U.S. imperialism. And 2, how do cultural beliefs, here's where we extend the lesson, impact your thoughts, actions, beliefs, the way you treat people? Do you think they do? Why or why not? Questions right away. Yeah.
For the Explorer attitudes,
Mhm.
the presentation says there's no access.
Oh, I'll give you guys access in a minute here, okay?